Welcome back to Breaking Ice. Today we're going to sit down with Danny McNeeley and get an update on his recent work towards solving the cost of living crisis in Norman Wells, brought on by the cost of fuel, heating fuel to be specific. We come to a number of conclusions. One is that there have been a few measures taken to provide relief before the final solution to this problem is followed through. Secondly, we discussed the opportunity for people to come on the podcast and tell their story about how this cost of living increase is affecting them, and use this as a tool to help advocate about how dire the situation is and how truly we need help up here. So if you are willing to do that, please reach out and we will make a time where we can sit down together and we can hear your story. So thanks for listening. Sincerely. Well, welcome back to the Breaking Ice podcast. My name is Josh Ferguson, and today we're here sitting with Danny McNeeley. This is our second episode that we've done together. The previous episode was a general introduction to him and his life, and how he got to where he got and what his background is like. And today we're going to get an update about the current ongoings with his work as MLA in Yellowknife, specifically related to the humanitarian state of emergency that was called in Norman Wells, along with the soaring cost of living, primarily the fuel prices. So, Danny, you've been working your butt off. How you doing?
Actually, I'm doing really good, Josh. It's one of those things that I really enjoy, to make a difference and minimize the impacts that are really sort of hurting our region in a number of ways. When I say the region, yes, you're right in saying the humanitarian crisis of escalated fuel is going up in Norman Wells, but it's going to be felt by the surrounding communities, and that was part of our presentation that we developed. When I say we, I mean along with myself was Mayor Frank Pope and Mayor Doug Yalley from Toledo. So together, the three of us and the staff, Kathy Clark, we did a number of presentations in Yellowknife and Ottawa as well.
Yeah, you guys have gone to Ottawa to advocate, and then they've returned, and then there was the municipal election here, and during the meantime, you were in Yellowknife at the Legislature, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. When we left our Ottawa trip here, we decided, okay, the mayors are going to be working out of their offices in the Sahtu, and then I'll be their voice in the Legislature.
So for for someone listening to this who hasn't been following that closely, they've obviously know that these kinds of things are going on, that you guys went to Ottawa and whatnot. But why did you feel it was important to go to Ottawa? Like, what was the purpose of your trip? Obviously to advocate for the community, but what did going to Ottawa do specifically that was so beneficial?
I would say there would be two major points here, Josh. Number one, the oil field, this Esso oil field is an asset of the federal government. Mm-hmm. So it brings in them as shareholders to the crisis situation. So that's number one, and to make that point known. And the second point was to advertise and advocate the issue that would qualify for various disaster relief funding. Mm. But the trigger to access those funds or those programs is to announce a state of an emergency. The state of an emergency triggers the opening of doors to federal resources.
And when you go to Ottawa to advocate, what does that look like when you have boots on the ground? Like, is it like, how many meetings did you guys have and with whom?
I'm going to say we had a number of meetings, and I can't, I stopped counting there, but I do believe it was like about 8 meetings that we had.
In like 3 days or something?
Yeah, it was a very cramped day going from one building to the next, and just trying to go through security was a time-consuming exercise there. And we met with a number of senators, and we met with the Indian Affairs Assistant Deputy Minister, and another appointment with another department there.
And when you guys went, you had many different people that you were talking, different departments with, and you were kind of highlighting the issue from different angles, I presume, to suit whatever their department was. But when they started to understand what the issues were here, tell me how that was received.
I would say it was received as shocking to see the unit price of home heating oil over $5 a liter. And when you put that in perspective to the cost of the residents' pocket,
Mm-hmm.
and you say to yourself, and prior to that, just let me back up a minute here, Josh.
Sure.
Prior to that, we put together our presentation. So we had electronic copy, we had a hard copy, and that was our presentation and hand delivering the message.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, part of the presentation was to visualize in perspective, what do you mean?
Mm.
And when I say, and I'm back home in Norman Wells now, and you can understand when I say even your building here, for example, you have a 250-gallon tank.
Yeah, so about 1,000 liters.
So we can say, okay, times 4.5 liters per gallon times $5.50. That equals to $6,200.
Yeah.
And some people in our presentation, what I'm telling you is what we were telling the audience in Yellowknife and Ottawa, is that some people take home $5,800 per month.
Yeah.
So your whole paycheck would go towards filling up the tank.
Yeah. Not to mention all the other utilities and rent and
yes.
food.
What about the food? What about the children clothes? Upcoming Christmas festive holidays?
Yeah.
What about your mortgage? What about your truck payments? Your skidoo payments? And the list goes on. So that was our presentation. I'm going to say that was really shocking to the listeners in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
When you say it in that context there now, you can understand, wow, this is a very huge problem. And we cannot continue to sustain this.
Yeah.
People are going to be leaving. They're going to say, I'm sorry, I can't work for you anymore. In this government right today, in this community, we have 172 government workers. And our housing corporation owns and supplies 53 units.
Yeah.
So that was part of our presentation, and it was all in our documented developed proposal or presentation.
Yeah. So irrespective of the outlandish costs to residents on a monthly basis, the government itself would be incurring massive costs because of the fuel price. And then also its own workers wouldn't be able to manage the monthly prices that they would have to pay for just heat. And even heat isn't necessarily a bill that even many Southerners consider. It might be built into your hydro or your energy costs, not necessarily like a different utility as far as the people that I've spoken to understand. So were you optimistic with the results from your Ottawa trip, and kind of what did that lead to? I know that the state of emergency was called after Ottawa. So that was a suggestion to kind of help move things forward?
Yes, I would say, Josh, yes, you're right. I feel confident, and I still do. And we have discussions going on between our territorial government and the minister's offices, and relating that message to Ottawa. So now it's a matter of finding and accessing and developing the request
Mm-hmm.
to offset this cost for designing the guidelines to meet that program or funding source.
Yeah. So as a resident, it kind of seems to me like there are three options for where money might come from. It could be either help from Imperial, help from the GNWT, or help from the federal government. And, time will tell where what ends up happening. My question is, when you were in the legislature, or is that the right word for the gathering of the all the ministers and everyone, the legislature. I remember watching live your address to them, and it seemed like there was such unanimous support from the other members. How did that, tell me about that, and how did that feel when you were, in those meetings?
Well, what we wanted to do here, Josh, and the standard protocol is that a member has 2.5 minutes to make a member statement.
Mm-hmm.
And you can request unanimous consent to conclude your statement. That gives you an additional 30 seconds.
Okay.
But what we done is we tabled a motion to have an emergency debate. And that gave every member 10 minutes to speak. So now you got more time to do a presentation and understanding to the issues of the problem. As I mentioned in the House there, a problem of this size, you need more than 4 questions.
Yeah.
You're allowed 4 questions after your member's statement. So that was the reason for initiating the emergency debate, which allowed us more time to make our presentation and to better understand what the problem was. So when we say, what's the problem, Josh, is in my discussions with Imperial, and I even went out to the courier's airplane, the air barge, and looked inside and seen the bladders that are being filled up with fuel being flown here. So doing that research and doing that really gives you an understanding to remedy the problem and understand the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say the problem, we keep talking about the problem. Okay, what is the problem?
Yeah.
The problem is that you're flying in fuel at a unbelievable rate. It's we were told that the air cost would be $3 to $3.50 per liter to haul 1.9 million liters of fuel from Yellowknife to here.
Yeah.
So you do the math, 1.9 times $3.50 a liter gives you $6.6 million. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
And what Imperial is doing is passing that cost on to you and me and the residents and the businesses of the community.
Yeah.
So understanding the problem, okay, how you can design and access solutions to rectify that, eliminate that problem.
Yeah.
So that was part of our message, to get to the core of the problem and help the listeners understand the solutions to rectify the problem.
So as I understand, the core of the problem is obviously the cost per liter of the heating fuel to fly it up here. And that was brought on because of an insufficient amount of fuel being delivered to Northern Wells as per our supply, that was precipitated by the lack of a barge, right? And then presumably, because, you talk to any local business owner here and they go, yeah, we knew the water wasn't going to make it this year, so we just planned ahead. So last winter road, everyone from HRN to, Ramparts to Northright, whomever it was, brought in everything they needed to on the winter road. And I can only assume, since we're in this situation, that there wasn't enough fuel that was brought in. And from my limited understanding, that was Imperial's responsibility. But correct me if I'm wrong here. The barge wasn't officially canceled till after the winter road season. Is that accurate? Last year?
Last year, a year ago, let's say
sure,
September 2023.
Yeah.
You had an example that you're going to have low water problems.
Yeah.
The last barge was canceled. Okay, so you had an indicator, a red flag.
Yeah.
Then in Christmas time, that season,
Coopers.
we ran out of Jet A.
That's right.
So there were some discussions going on, which I was a part of, and basically doing the same thing as what we're doing now, flying in Jet A fuel so we can keep our aircrafts going.
But Jet A didn't go up by 350.
No, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Whoever is doing the fuel management supply on behalf of this community, well, maybe they should double check their management quality control systems.
Sure.
By dipping your tanks, you know how much fuel you got.
Yeah.
And the suppliers have been here for years, so you should know the data of consumption from last year to the year before to the last 10 years.
Yeah. And then, so regardless, here we are. And I had a couple other questions that I was hoping to ask you. So it seemed like there was a lot of support for the GNWT to kind of help us. I heard it on the legislature. People were saying, let's cut the check. These people need help. And there's tons of people in town who are in dire situations, watching their fuel tank empty, kind of probably not filling it up, hoping that by the time it's empty that there's some relief. Now, we've recently heard a few things. One, again, please correct me if my understanding is wrong here, but the GNWT was thinking about possibly helping cover the costs, but there was some interest in trying to hold Imperial accountable. That's at least my understanding.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The GNWT was of the position, and they were having discussions. And when I say the GNWT, I mean the Minister of Infrastructure's office.
Sure.
Her and I got a good working relationship, and we were trying to solicit solutions for the problem. And she was in discussions with Imperial, so was I. So we kind of recognize that, it is what it is. There's no turning back. We gotta face the problem of recovering access funds to rectify the fly-in cost.
Sure.
So internally, we said, okay, let's look at the GNWT, and what we want to do on behalf of GNWT is look at exhausting other options
before
looking and entertaining and cutting the check, if you want to say.
Sure. So other options being, hey, let's distribute the cost of fuel over a longer period of time, right? That's one.
I'm going to say yes. That was one. But bringing relief was what Imperial said. Okay, we're going to spread the costs over a longer period, which reduces the immediate price now.
Certainly. Now, it's still doubled instead of tripled, more or less. We're speaking in rough terms. But it's also important to recognize that the cost incurred by the community hasn't decreased. It's just spread out, which is helpful. There's no doubt that that's helpful for instead of just being able to fill up your tank, you can pay your mortgage too. No food, but heat and mortgage.
You're absolutely right. That brought immediate relief, but it still doesn't eliminate the problem.
Certainly.
So that's, like you had mentioned, the problem still lies out there, and you're not done yet. And I admit that I'm not done yet. We got to bring access to 6.6 million to offset that cost.
Totally.
So we are having discussions with the federal government. We issued a number of correspondence here in the last few days. As I mentioned earlier, we had a very good response and attendance by the various senators' offices, and one of them is the senator. I forget his name again, but he's coming up here on the 2nd and 3rd of November, and I would like to arrange an interview with him and your podcast.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'd love to talk to them. The more people that we can get on to kind of understand how everything's working and keep people informed, I think the better.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, Josh, that, we're still double the cost of what it was.
Yeah.
What it was, back in September the 27th, our unit price per liter for stove oil or diesel fuel, it was $1.90.
Yeah.
We're sitting at $3.34 a liter now, so it's still high, but it's not at the ultimate high of $5.16 per liter.
Totally. My point to that being is I think it was a Globe and Mail article or something like that said Imperial slashes fuel costs in the NWT. And the truth of the matter is kind of, but you had to read the article to actually understand it. And it felt misleading from the headline. And I guess my concern, not that I believe that you are going to be committed to seeing this through. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of the way that the news cycle works, there's a crisis. And then you get a headline like that and people go, kind of solved. And then they move on. And we need the continued attention to be able to help solve the problem. Because if there's not, eyes on the situation, attention, then there's not pressure, then there's not a desire to solve it if there's not, pressure. And then there was an update today that I saw something about Imperial Did you see this update today? Imperial saying that they found 33 cents or something like that in the transport of the fuel that they will be removing. So I guess it saves us 33 cents per the liter. And again, everything is good. I'm not exactly clear on how that integrates into the full, time frame in which costs are recouped. But what I'm trying to say here is that it feels like there was a lot of energy put towards this, and then there was some concessions is the wrong word, but movement and progress, but it's not solved. And I'm curious about your perspective on what the next steps are to kind of keep up the pressure and maintain. Because, there was so much, it felt like talk from the GNWT about, hey, let's help solve this. Like, in my view, as a resident and someone who's kind of trying to pay attention to the situation and thinking about how we could best aid, the folks here who don't have, options in terms of how they're going to heat their home or make ends meet, is to cover the costs and then kind of figure out where it all comes from after the fact. Like if the GNWT has, to deal with Imperial in terms of how they sort that out, do that after individuals incur the cost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense here. And let's just identify the different types of relief that have been initiated over the last number of days here. But you already gave me a job to do. I'm curious about that 33 cents, and I'll be phoning Imperial to find out.
We could look at the Facebook post. Should we read it?
Maybe we can look at it here after.
Okay, sure.
But if it is what it is, that's good.
Yeah,
every penny counts.
100%.
And what the other two things that the GNWT done in providing additional relief?
There was the business thing, and then there was the senior home heating.
Well, actually, the business thing or the business relief was what I started at the beginning of June. I initiated that there after the announcement of the cancellation of the barge, and the business community needs some help. Okay, so that relief is here now as a result of that initiation.
Certainly
back in June. And the town of Norman Wells Community Food Bank got a contribution of $150,000, so there's some relief there. And the home heating fuel for seniors went up to $1,477, I believe it is. So there's
up from 700 or something. Like there was
up from 752.
So it doubled.
It doubled.
Now, again, these are all excellent steps towards a solution. However, the lion's share of the problem is still looking us.
Yeah, the lion's share of the problem, or the problem, let's call it the 6.6 million problem.
Yeah,
that is still there.
Still there.
So we're still going to work on that. We're going to take an aggressive approach.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, one of the engagements we had with the senator who's going to be coming here, so they'll have boots on the ground to see and talk to people. And what better knowledge when they leave by talking to the people that are really impacted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great step. Yeah, I guess my question is like, how do we keep up the momentum, and how do everyday people help you in that process? Because I'm sure there would be there's no end to how much effort I think citizens would like to put in to kind of be behind you in terms of solving this problem. And understanding how to do that can be difficult if you don't have contact with the right people.
Well, I would say one of the good things that could be kept up is our voices.
Yeah.
Take this podcast, for example. That could be shared with anybody and everybody at the territorial level as well as the federal level. One of the table documents that the two mayors had put forth in Ottawa was the testimonials, and as you recall, there was a lot of testimonials from the residents requested on behalf of the town of Norman Wells. So those really play a value. Now I'm a bureaucrat downtown Ottawa, looking at these testimonials about the impact to the family homes.
No, I just had an idea in terms of the testimonials. I'd be happy to put time and effort towards, if you're watching this and you have a story that you want to come on and tell, please reach out. And I'd be happy to host you, and you can come sit in the chair and tell us how this is affecting your life. And if we have many residents do that, I can make a longer video of video testimonials about how people are being impacted. And that it's one thing to read on paper what, how someone's being impacted, and it's powerful, but it is still abstracted from the human experience of looking someone in the eyes while they tell you what they're scared of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Marketing your product, in this case, marketing your problem, would really help us sell it to Ottawa, the people that are going to be actually approving our funding application. So the more audio presentations, the more that message could be realized in Ottawa by looking at this podcast.
Yeah.
And playing down this USB stick.
Yeah.
So that would be really helpful. And I encourage residents to come and see you, Josh, to do even a 10, 15-minute presentation.
Yeah, if we do.
And we can mail that to Ottawa, and that'll be all part of our campaign.
That's just it. So you heard it here. If you want to come on and tell your story, reach out to Josh at breakingiceproductions.com, and we'll make it happen. Hopefully we can get 6-10 stories.
Yeah. That'd
be really cool.
Because as I mentioned, we already are in communication. We, the GNWT, are in communication with different federal ministers. So if we have a campaign through your audio services, boy, that would be really heartfelt in Ottawa.
All right. Well, we're going to do that. Hopefully we get some interest. Tell me about your optimism of this actually coming to fruition. From connecting with different residents and just talking to friends and whatnot, people are optimistic, but there's a hefty dose of realism behind their optimism, where people kind of might not entirely believe that this will be solved and that they are actually going to have to foot the bill. And maybe it will be solved, but they might have to foot the bill to a devastating level before it's solved. So
okay, I'll give you one example of my optimism on this problem being resolved. When we made a motion to call for an emergency debate, there were 16 members in the House.
Yes,
and all 16 members voted in favor. So if I table a motion to direct the government to pay for this bill, you can do the math and say, well, I think he's got 16 votes.
And just educate me here. If 16 members vote for that, does it just happen? Or I don't know what the next steps are of that.
Yeah, well, part of the mandate would be to direct cabinet or the finance minister to,
I see.
Like you say, cut a check.
Yeah.
And majority of the 19 MLAs do support a solution to this problem.
Sure. So the intent behind the continued advocacy before that happens is hopefully there's something else that can be done to help lessen the impact for the GNWT.
Well, right now, I think we've done all what we can as a GNWT to lessen the immediate impact.
Yeah.
There's funding being provided. There's higher senior rates, and one of
food bank. Yeah.
One of the recent comments by the Minister of ITI, and she had told me to pass a message on. If your household, because of this high increase, your heating bill escalated to the point where it's over and above your revenue that you brought in with your paychecks and your income, then you'd qualify for relief. So I want that message sent.
I haven't heard that yet. So
no, I just got that 2 days ago.
Okay. So where do they go for that?
They would go to the Income Support ECE office and file a claim.
Okay.
So take you for example, Josh. If you're making $1,000 a month and your living costs, including groceries and the fuel, brought it up to $2,000 a month, then you would qualify for assistance.
Gotcha.
So I want that message set out there, passed on. And if people got any questions, they can feel free to give me a call.
All right. What I'm going to try and do is put this episode out as fast as possible, but I will try, and once I find those links to maybe the website for those services that you're referencing right now, I'll add them on to the bio or to the episode so people can have a means to get there. You doing okay? Just you. Like you've been fighting for us, and it's not easy. And I'm sure you've been having trouble sleeping. But like, how is Danny McNeeley doing?
Well, actually, I'm not doing too bad, but I look forward to a restful weekend.
Yeah.
I've been on the road here for the last 3 weeks, including the Ottawa trip. And as you recall, on the weekend of September the 23rd, I had 2 ministers here. So we did a tour. Bad weather set in, so we couldn't make it to Toledo. And afterwards, we had a caucus retreat. And after that trip, we had I sit on 4 committees, so it keeps me busy at that level. So we did an MTS trip there to Hay River. Mm-hmm. And then the Ottawa trip came in. So it's been like go.
No kidding. Yeah, make sure you take care of yourself, because it's easy to get burnt out when you're doing stuff like this.
But I also wanted to say, and we told this to the audience in Yellowknife and particularly Ottawa, is that ultimately to fix this problem is the highway.
Of course.
And basically where that project is at right now, Josh, is that the territorial government has issued, and replies came in to hire a consulting firm to produce the business case or the application. The last application that was produced at the cost of the GNWT was in 2015. So since then, the cost has really escalated to the point where we got to update that business plan. Mm-hmm. So the business plan is going to be developed by a selected contractor.
Yep.
And we're hoping to have that done in the coming weeks, so we can take the application, send it to Ottawa, then we can start lobbying for the necessary funds. And as you would recall, Pierre Poilievre went to Yellowknife.
That's right.
I think it was last month.
Yeah.
And the question was asked and about the highway, and he supports the highway. And he said, have a proposal with the cost and timeline on my desk on day one.
So it's unclear when day one will be.
It depends on the election.
Sure.
But I think in everybody's monitoring the news, there is a federal election coming, but it's just a matter of
within now or the next 13 months or something like that.
Yeah. On schedule.
Yeah. Well,
the next election
is that is a very optimistic message that the next, likely next government is supporting the highway. And that would, obviously that's the be all end all solution. That would give a breath of fresh air into the Sawtoo and relieve a lot of pressure, whether it be groceries and gas or just everything, business, supply chain issues and traveling, visiting family, commuting. It could.
Yeah. You think about it, Josh, and sure, I represent the Sawtoo. And if you look at this undeveloped region, it's the largest region of the Northwest Territories with so much potential.
Yeah.
But what you really need is investment certainty and affordability.
Yeah.
You need some company to come here and say, yes, I want to develop a project in the Sawtoo. Now it's more affordable because I can jump in my truck and drive there.
Yeah.
Rather than fly.
Yeah. It changes the game completely. Well, that's awesome.
Think about it this way, Josh. So in some of my previous sales, call it sales discussions or sale talks, is every project in that industry, 30% of the budget goes to labor costs. Mm-hmm. So labor costs could be producing revenues back to the initiator, which is the federal government. Mm-hmm. If your labor costs are 30% of your project costs $1 billion to build a road and a bridge over Bear River, 30% of that would be tax revenues back to the government.
Yeah.
In terms of tobacco sales, gas tax, fuel tax, personal income tax, and the list goes on. So it's really a disposal economy that you're creating that would reverse to benefit the initiator. Mm-hmm. What a good
deal.
TPR, taxpayers' return.
There you go. Yeah. And it's the potential of kind of how that would help the Sahtu is yet to be realized. So there's going to be benefits that we can't even foresee.
Yeah, no, I look forward to having that encouraging discussion to the at the federal level and say, listen, like, this is a good investment of public taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
And look at the region. You're going to get a huge basket of benefits.
Yeah.
Tourism will boom. Cost of living will go down.
Yeah.
And everybody real estate will go up. Like, it's just endless.
Yeah.
The thoughts of benefits.
I am optimistic for the future.
So you got to stay here. Please stay here. This is going to be a region.
Yeah, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Well, it's not gone by any means, but thanks for coming on today. I think it means a lot to hear from you and kind of get this, people know you and people know that you're fighting for us, but it's really helpful to sit down with you and look you in the eye and hear you kind of talk about these things. And you're always welcome back when you have updates. We'll do another, 30 minutes and kind of get the word out. And it's been a pleasure to work with you, Danny. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Josh. And I look forward to our next information. My moving forward schedule is I go back to the Legislative Assembly on Tuesday, and we got a 4-day sitting. Then we're into community visits and breaks and so on there for the holidays, and back into the budget session in February.
Will this be a topic in the next sitting?
I'm hoping it won't be a topic because we would have fixed the problem by then.
That would be fantastic. Well, I hope to not be listening.
Okay, Josh.
All right, Danny. Thanks for coming on.
Have an enjoyable weekend.
Yeah, you too.